Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He's a member of the Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
So you just heard President Trump saying that a wiretap covers a lot of different things. Do you think he's backing away from his initial claims 11 days ago in those 4 tweets when he repeatedly said my wires were tapped in Trump Tower? He blamed President Obama for that. President Obama was wiretapping. He kept referring to that, but now he says it has a broader definition. Do you buy that?
Whether it's the president talking about a birth certificate, talking about illegal immigrants voting, and now being wiretapped, he's not credible. And this is nothing more than the president throwing a smoke bomb into an investigation around Russia. And the smoke is cleared, and what we are finding is there are more and more questions about the ties between the president, his team, personal, financial, and political, with Russia.
His aides are saying the words wiretap really could mean surveillance. There were other forms of surveillance going on there. Is that possible in your mind?
He's provided zero evidence for that. But what I hope is going on is an investigation into individuals on his team who were traveling over to Russia as the interference campaign took place. Carter Page, for example, 1 month after it was reported that Russia was attacking us, he, with permission of the campaign as a senior foreign policy advisor, traveled over to Russia. Those are the types of relationships we want to find out if they extended to working with Russia as they were attacking us.
But the president also said he thinks that, in his words, very interesting items will be coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks. So what do you think he's talking about?
Well, again, it can't get into the president's mind. And teasing something that's coming out a week from now or 2 weeks from now is something that the president often does. If you remember back to the Muslim ban that he put in place, he promised that a new ban would come in place within a week, and it ended up being about a month later. So he likes to just kind of tease things. You know, he's a showman, and I think this is just part of his craft.
The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, the Republican Devin Nunes, he says it's possible the president could have been swept up in what they call some incidental collection of data. Someone else was being surveilled, for example. Do you believe that?
Well, again, we haven't seen evidence of that. Director Comey will be before our committee on Monday, and what we want to know is whether any U.S. persons were involved in working with Russia as the interference campaign took place. And so we would hope that they would be looking, if that took place, at any individuals who were talking to Russia. And if that included the president, certainly Americans would want to know about that. But right now we have seen zero evidence to that point.
Chairman Nunes also said he has not seen evidence of wiretapping, but then said it's all in the interpretation of what you believe. Those were his words. So he is leaving the door open that the president may believe this, even if there isn't any evidence. He says he certainly hasn't seen any evidence. No one apparently has seen any evidence. But go ahead and react to that.
Yeah, again, this was nothing more than the president defaming the former president, who was nothing but gracious and helped President Trump throughout the transition. And again, it was purposeful. This wasn't the president, wearing a tin hat and being conspiratorial. This was somebody who did this because he wanted to deceive us and take away the focus on the questions about his involvement and his team's involvement with Russia as they were attacking us. So this was an obstruction of an investigation.
If on Monday, when FBI Director Comey comes before your Intelligence Committee and he says there's no evidence President Obama ordered the wiretapping of Trump Tower in New York City, do you see the White House accepting that? What do you see the president doing?
No. President Trump didn't accept the proof of President Obama's birth certificate when he made that outrageous claim. It took him over 4 years to even, I would say, in a watered-down way, acknowledge that President Obama was born here. So, no, when confronted with evidence, rarely does President Trump acknowledge it, and I don't expect anything to be different here.
Do you believe Republicans will hold his administration, the president's administration, accountable if those allegations he leveled 11 days ago in those 4 tweets are proven baseless?
Wolf, they have to. They need to put country over party. I'm calling for an independent commission to look at what happened with Russia, whether U.S. persons were involved, and what we can do to protect future elections. Every Democrat has supported that bill, with myself and Elijah Cummings, but only one Republican has, Walter Jones, and he was the first one to oppose the Iraq War. So we need more courageous people like him to come forward if we're going to make progress in this investigation.
But, Congressman, have you seen any solid, clear, hard evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians in connection with their with their hacking in connection with their cyber attacks against the Democrats?
There's a lot of dots that continue to connect. And if I invite people to go to my website, swalwell.house.gov, where we lay out why Russia's not our friend, the extensive Trump ties, in addition to Page, who I just pointed out. Roger Stone, as you reported earlier, was communicating with Guccifer 2.0 as they were hacking us. And so, as the Russians were hacking us. So there's a number of people on his team who were working with Russia, whether through political and business ties, and what Americans want to know is, were they working with them in this interference campaign they were running? And that, I think, requires an independent commission, because the Trump team cannot be impartial with this, as we've already seen with Jeff Sessions.
You know, Congressman, what the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, said about two weeks ago. He says he hasn't seen any evidence of direct collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
And Wolf, what I would say to that is that it's likely that Director Clapper may not have been read into that. And what I mean is that oftentimes when the FBI conducts an investigation, until it is closed, they may not be reporting to other members of the intelligence community. And that's so that they can, with a close hold, pursue all leads and not exploit what they're doing or compromise their investigation. But hopefully we'll get more answers on that on Monday.
Congressman, stand by. There's more information coming into the Situation Room. I'm going to get your reaction. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Our breaking news, President Trump breaks his 11-day silence on his claim that he was wiretapped, suggesting the word wiretap covers a lot of different things. We're talking with Congressman Eric Swalwell. But first, the Justice Department has indicted 2 Russian agents and 2 other people in the cyber attack on Yahoo, which compromised at least 500 million accounts. CNN's Jessica Schneider has been tracking that story for us. So, Jessica, what are you learning?
Well, you know, Wolf, justice officials pointing squarely at the Russians today, warning they will not tolerate state-sponsored cyber attacks. This is the first time Russian officials have ever been charged with a cyber hacking crime by the U.S. government. The FBI says these 2 men are Russian spies, and tonight they're wanted for pulling off one of the largest cyber thefts in U.S. history, accused of stealing personal and financial information from more than 500 million Yahoo users. The Russian intelligence officers Dmitry Dokuchayev and Igor Sushkin were indicted today for a breach the U.S. government says stretched over 2 years in both the U.S. and Russia.
The Department of Justice is continuing to send the powerful message that we will not allow individuals, groups, nation states, or a combination of them to compromise the privacy of our citizens.
The FBI says some of the hacked Yahoo accounts belong to U.S. government officials, as well as to employees of a U.S. airline. Yahoo, which has more than 1 billion users worldwide, cooperated with the investigation, and in a statement today praised the FBI and pointed to Russian involvement, writing, "The indictment unequivocally shows the attacks on Yahoo were state-sponsored. The scheme, allegedly directed and paid for by the 2 Russian spies, was allegedly carried out by 2 criminal hackers, including this man, Karim Baratov. Baratov was arrested Tuesday morning in Canada. His Facebook and Instagram feeds show a passion for partying, fast cars, and a love of computers. This picture of one of his tattoos is written in binary code. Last month, he posted he was suspended from school 4 years ago, and he cashed in, saying, "I was well off in high school to be able to afford driving a BMW 7 Series and pay off a mortgage on my first house." The other man, allegedly hired by the Russian spies, Alexei Bilan, has evaded law enforcement around the world since 2012. Bilan is listed as one of the FBI's most wanted hackers. He's been indicted twice in the U.S. for computer fraud and is the subject of an outstanding Interpol red notice. Still, U.S. investigators say he somehow made it back to Russia in 2013, despite being arrested by police in Europe.
The FSB knew this. There was red notices up on him, and they've known that he's been in their country, yet they still allowed him to operate unfettered there.
Tonight, in a strange twist, one of the alleged masterminds of the hacking, FSB officer Dokuchayev, is in custody in Russia, according to a defense lawyer. He's charged with treason, allegedly for working on behalf of the United States. And the FBI believes the other FSB officer, Igor Sushkin, is also in Russia. U.S. officials stress this case, though, is not connected to election hacking by Russians. But tonight, a lot of questions about why that former spy wanted by the U.S. is also charged with treason by Russia. Wolf?
All right, Jessica, thank you. Jessica Schneider reporting. We're back with Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, a member of the Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. Do you have an answer to that, Congressman? Is it a positive sign that Russia has made at least one arrest?
No, Wolf. This is the same thing they did after the interference campaign. If you remember, back in December and January, they announced arrests of their SFB officers from their computer unit there. And this is the team that was responsible for hacking us during the election. And we think it was just for show. And I applaud the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of California, my hometown district, and the FBI team there. But what their work shows is that Russia continues to attack us. And that's what the intelligence report showed after the interference campaign last election, was that they're going to continue to sharpen the knives, go at us, and also our allies. And so France and Germany, who have upcoming elections, they should be very worried about Russia's capabilities.
What does it tell you, Congressman, that two of those involved in this attack on Yahoo were actually, or still are, officers of the Russian Federal Security Service, the FSB, the successor to the KGB?
That Russia is not our friend and that we should get tough on them and not embrace them.
And what would you do?
Well, I would increase the sanctions that have already been put on place, not intimate that we would roll them back as President Trump has done. I would try and do everything I can as a president to work with NATO to increase our capabilities and bring in more countries to protect the Baltics and the Balkans. But President Trump has demoralized other NATO countries by suggesting that maybe the role isn't what it needs to be, or isn't what it was in the past. And so the policy towards Russia is shifting. And I think it's very interesting that people like U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions had spoken out his whole career against Russia. Then after the interference campaign, meets twice with the Russian ambassador and changes his position. And that's what is so concerning to so many Americans, is whether these political, personal, and business ties extended to not just changing the position on policy towards Russia, but also working with Russia.
We're all going to look forward to that House Intelligence Committee hearing on Monday, where Comey and others in the intelligence community will be testifying in open session. All right, Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.